What would happen if you woke up to a day that completely changes the course of history? Elon Musk's eyes flickered open to the soft hum of the Mars colony. A subtle, almost mechanical sensation filled the air, a reminder that he was, indeed, on Mars, far from Earth, and at the heart of the greatest adventure humanity had ever undertaken. The colony, SpaceX's pride, was bustling with its usual hum of activity. Engineers were working tirelessly on their latest projects, a small team of botanists were perfecting Mars' first sustainable crops, and astronauts continued their endless shifts of training for the harsh Martian environment. It was a routine day, like any other. For Elon, a routine day was a gift. It meant things were stable. But stability in the midst of space exploration was always temporary. Nothing ever stayed the same for long. And today, as it so often did on Mars, that fragile stability was about to be shattered. His personal quarters were quiet as he lay still for a moment, letting the sounds of Mars' artificial life outside seep into his consciousness. He ran his hand over the pillow, reminding himself once again that this was no longer the future. This was the present. And he had led humanity to this moment. Rolling out of bed, he moved to the communication terminal beside his desk. A quick glance at his watch revealed it was still early, but an incoming message caught his eye. His heart skipped a beat as he noticed that the subject line was a single word, urgent. He pressed the button to open the message. The screen flickered briefly before a cryptic series of symbols flashed across the display, far too complex to be any ordinary transmission. At first glance, it seemed to be a mix of mathematical codes, interwoven with symbols that didn't belong to any language known to humans. The message appeared to be a combination of numbers and a string of coordinates, a sequence so advanced it sent a chill down his spine. Elon sat back in his chair, perplexed. There was no doubt in his mind, this wasn't human-made. The complexity of the message suggested it came from somewhere, or someone, else. His immediate reaction was to call in his closest team members. Emma, he called into the intercom, speaking to Emma Zhao, the lead scientist overseeing the colony's communication systems. I need you in my office, now. Something's happened. Moments later, Emma arrived, her face just as puzzled as Elon's. They exchanged a glance, the unspoken tension hanging in the air. The technology they had on Mars was advanced, but nothing in their system could decode this. What is this? Emma asked, pointing at the screen. Elon stood, staring at the array of symbols. I don't know, but it doesn't look like anything we've ever encountered before. Do you think it's a prank? She asked, though she didn't believe her own words. He shook his head. This isn't a joke. It's too sophisticated. Elon's mind raced, trying to piece together what this could mean. He'd always believed in the potential of space, the possibility that life beyond Earth existed, but this was something entirely different. Could it be a message from another civilization? Was this the moment he had been waiting for, the first sign that humanity wasn't alone in the universe? The coordinates flashed on the screen again, a silent reminder that this wasn't a theoretical message. It was real. And it was coming from Mars itself. Emma, I need you to run the coordinates through every possible system we have. See if there's any point on Mars that corresponds to this location. And get the team together. We need to be ready for whatever comes next. As Emma left, Elon remained seated, staring at the message. His mind wandered back to Earth, to the countless hours spent in meetings, pitching SpaceX's Mars mission, and the early days when no one truly believed it could work. Now, here he was, living on the very planet he once dreamed of. And yet, this new mystery was beyond anything he had ever imagined. He felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. This was the moment. Something bigger than any of them had expected was happening. As the days had gone on, he had sometimes allowed himself to imagine what the future of Mars might hold. Maybe a small, thriving colony of humans, working in tandem with artificial intelligence and robots. Maybe the creation of the first sustainable, self-sufficient society in another world. But now, with the mysterious message flashing before him, it seemed like he had been naive to think that the future of Mars would be simple. The reality of exploring space, of colonizing new worlds, had always been about managing risks, risks of failure, risks of death, and even the risk of the unknown. But this? This was something far beyond his understanding. Suddenly, the comms system crackled, breaking the silence. It was Emma. "Elon, you're going to want to see this." Within minutes, Elon was in the communications room, where Emma and the team had already begun investigating the coordinates. A holographic map of Mars projected above the table, with the coordinates now highlighted. "The location is near the Valles Marineris," Emma said, pointing to a red spot on the map. "It's an ancient Martian canyon system. But here's the thing, this coordinate is deep within an unexplored section of the canyon. No one has ever set foot there." Elon's heart skipped a beat. The Valles Marineris was one of Mars' most mysterious features, a massive canyon system that stretched across the planet's surface. But what lay hidden in its depths was unknown to humanity. "We need to get there," Elon said, his voice a mix of determination and curiosity. "This is where it leads us, and we're not backing down now." The room fell into a tense silence. There was no going back. Whatever lay ahead could change everything. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon's words echoed in his mind. This wasn't just a normal day on Mars anymore. This was the beginning of something far greater. As the team prepared for the journey, the air felt thick with the weight of the unknown. Elon took one last look at the holographic map, feeling a mix of anticipation and dread. Mars had already changed everything. But this was a whole new level. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk had always been the kind of person who never accepted limitations. As a child, he had imagined himself as a pioneer, someone who would one day leave Earth behind and build a future among the stars. His journey to this point, sitting in the dimly lit control room of Mars' SpaceX colony, was the culmination of a lifetime spent chasing the impossible. His childhood wasn't easy. Growing up in Pretoria, South Africa, Elon had always felt like an outsider. His mind operated on a different frequency, absorbing books on science fiction and space exploration long before most kids his age could comprehend the complexities of the universe. He devoured tales of distant galaxies, of astronauts braving the unknown, and of great minds like Carl Sagan and Isaac Asimov. Space wasn't just something he found fascinating, it was something he felt destined to understand. But it wasn't just curiosity that drove him. Elon had a fire within him, an unyielding desire to prove that humanity could break free from its earthly constraints. From a young age, he decided that Earth was not enough. The future of mankind, he believed, could only be secured through the colonization of other planets. After leaving South Africa and moving to Canada, and then the United States, Elon enrolled at the University of Pennsylvania, where he would study economics and physics. He was relentlessly focused, often burying himself in his studies, determined to gain the knowledge that would one day fuel his vision. But it wasn't until the founding of Zip2 and later PayPal that he truly began making his mark. It was after PayPal's sale to eBay in 2002 that Elon turned his attention fully to his dream of space. He had already become a billionaire, but for him, money wasn't the goal, it was the means to an end. The end was Mars. With the creation of SpaceX in 2002, he faced wave after wave of skepticism. People called him crazy, laughed at his lofty aspirations. How could anyone realistically think of colonizing Mars? How could one company take on the enormous task of reducing space travel costs and sending humans to another planet? To most, it seemed like science fiction. But to Elon Musk, it was the only way forward. By the time he and his team had established the colony on Mars, the vision he had nurtured for decades had begun to take shape. Yet, despite all the technological feats SpaceX had achieved, landing rockets back on Earth, sending the first private spacecraft to the International Space Station, nothing had felt as groundbreaking as this moment. This wasn't just about launching rockets or sending equipment to Mars. This was about the survival of humanity. In those quiet moments, after another long day of meetings and progress reports, Elon would sometimes stand alone at the colony's observatory, staring at the cold, barren landscape. Mars had always seemed so far away in his mind, something only possible in the distant future. But here he was, standing on the surface of the red planet, living his dream. He never let himself grow complacent, though. The stakes were too high. Mars wasn't just a project for him, it was the key to humanity's survival. Earth was dying, in his eyes. Climate change, war, resource depletion, it was all pushing humanity to the brink. Mars, for all its dangers and unknowns, was humanity's best shot at avoiding extinction. But even with all his success, even with all his relentless drive and hard-won victories, Elon was no stranger to moments of doubt. The loneliness of space, the isolation of the colony, sometimes made him wonder if it was all worth it. The long hours, the constant pressure, the constant weight of responsibility, it often felt like the future of humanity rested squarely on his shoulders. Elon's mind wandered back to the first time he set foot on Mars. It was a moment he would never forget, the way the red dust had clung to his boots, the eerie silence of the planet surrounding him. He had promised himself then that he would do whatever it took to make Mars home, but as the years passed, the magnitude of that promise began to feel even heavier. Was he pushing humanity too fast, too far? Would Mars become their salvation, or their downfall? The team on Mars had become his second family. The engineers, scientists, and astronauts who worked tirelessly alongside him were the backbone of the colony. They weren't just employees, they were pioneers. Together, they had built a thriving ecosystem on Mars, complete with greenhouses, solar farms, and self-sustaining habitats. The colony wasn't perfect, but it was alive, and that was a victory in itself. Among the people Elon had grown closest to was Emma Zhao, the lead scientist overseeing the colony's environmental systems. She was brilliant, driven, and shared his passion for making Mars a viable home for future generations. Elon trusted her more than anyone else on the planet, and they had spent countless hours discussing the future of the colony and humanity's place in the cosmos. But even with the steady progress they'd made, there was a constant undercurrent of uncertainty. The unknown had always been part of the equation, and every decision Elon made seemed to carry enormous weight. He had risked everything, his fortune, his reputation, and his relationships, to create a future on Mars. Yet, there were days when he found himself questioning whether he was truly ready for what lay ahead. When the mysterious signal had arrived that morning, he hadn't been sure how to react. It wasn't just a routine anomaly, it was a message that hinted at something far beyond their current understanding. What could it mean? Who could it be from? And why now, after all these years of careful planning and progress? As the team worked to decode the message, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that this was a pivotal moment. The signal, the coordinates, it felt like a challenge, or perhaps even a warning. If humanity was truly on the cusp of discovering something monumental, was Mars ready for what might be unleashed? As he stared out over the Martian horizon, a soft, unfamiliar anxiety crept into Elon's chest. Was the dream of colonizing Mars truly about creating a new beginning for humanity, or was it, as some feared, just another chapter in mankind's history of reaching for the stars, only to fall short? He shook his head, trying to dismiss the thought. There would be time for reflection later. For now, he had to focus on what was in front of him. The future of Mars, and perhaps humanity, depended on it. As the hours passed, tension hung in the air like a storm cloud. Elon stood with his team in the central operations room, staring at the massive digital map of Mars projected in front of them. The coordinates were burned into his mind, and every passing second only deepened his unease. Emma Zhao paced back and forth, her brow furrowed as she double-checked the results from the initial analysis. The mysterious signal had led them to a remote area deep in the Valles Marineris, the canyon system that stretched across the Martian landscape like an ancient scar. It was one of Mars' most enigmatic features, vast, uncharted, and barely explored. The fact that the coordinates led them to a place so far off the beaten path only added to the unease gnawing at Elon's gut. "Elon, I don't understand," Emma said, breaking the silence. "The signal, it's not just coming from a static location. It's moving." Elon's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, moving?" "I mean it's shifting. The source seems to be, following the canyon's structure. It's almost as if it's actively moving towards something, or someone." The words hung in the air. A chill ran through Elon as he realized just how little they knew about what was happening. The entire purpose of their mission on Mars had been to unlock its secrets, but they were encountering something completely unexpected, something that seemed to defy all logic. Could it be a natural phenomenon? Elon asked, his voice tight. "I wish I could say that," Emma replied, tapping at her tablet. "But the frequency and complexity of the signal are beyond anything we've seen before. It's almost as if it's deliberately trying to communicate with us, intelligently." A tense silence followed. The entire room was watching Elon now, waiting for his response. They all knew that this was bigger than just a strange signal. This could change everything. Elon's mind raced, running through all the possibilities. If this was indeed some form of extraterrestrial intelligence, what were they dealing with? And more importantly, why now? The colony's main engineer, Marcus, stepped forward, his voice low and cautious. "Sir, if this thing is moving, then it's not just a signal. It's something active, something that could be dangerous." Elon felt his pulse quicken. He had always been the optimist, the one who pushed forward in the face of uncertainty, but now, even he was starting to wonder if this was a step too far. "Emma, I need you to run a simulation," Elon said. "Can we track the signal? Can we find a way to predict its next move?" Emma nodded, already working on her tablet. The room was eerily quiet as she typed, the sound of her fingers tapping against the screen echoing in the stillness. "I'll try, but it's going to take time. We need to calculate its trajectory, but I don't have enough data yet. We might need to send a team to investigate the source directly." "Agreed," Elon said. "Prepare the rover." "I'm going with you." Emma's head snapped up in surprise. "What? Elon, you can't be serious. The terrain out there is treacherous. It's too dangerous." "I'm aware," Elon replied, his voice resolute. "But we don't know what this is. If we wait for someone else to figure it out, we might miss our chance to understand it before it's too late." The team exchanged uncertain glances, but none of them argued. They knew that when Elon made up his mind, there was no stopping him. It was what had gotten them this far, his unwavering determination, his willingness to take risks others wouldn't dare. But now, as the situation grew more dire, even Elon couldn't shake the creeping doubt in the back of his mind. The hours that followed were filled with frantic preparations. Elon, Emma, Marcus, and a small team of astronauts suited up and made their way to the rover. The tension was palpable, everyone aware that this mission could be their most important yet, or their last. The rover was a heavily modified machine, built to withstand the harsh Martian environment, but even its rugged design would be tested by the unforgiving terrain of the Valles Marineris. The canyon system was massive, with steep cliffs and jagged rocks, and there was no telling what the team would encounter once they reached their destination. As the rover began its descent into the canyon, the landscape outside became more alien by the minute. The orange-red dust of Mars swirled around them, and the towering cliffs of the Valles Marineris loomed overhead like silent giants, casting long shadows over the crew. "Elon, look at this," Emma said, her voice tense as she studied the data on her screen. "The signal is getting stronger." Marcus leaned in. "This doesn't make sense. We should have lost contact with it by now. We're deep in the canyon. The terrain's interfering with the communication system." "I don't care about the signal," Elon said, his focus laser-sharp. "What matters is getting to the source. We need to know who or what sent it, and why." The rover bounced and swayed as they navigated the narrow paths of the canyon, the rocky walls closing in around them. Each turn felt like a step into the unknown. As they pushed deeper into the canyon, a sense of foreboding settled over the team. The signal continued to grow in intensity, each pulse reverberating in the air like a warning. Elon could feel his heart racing. This wasn't just a technological anomaly, it was something else. Something bigger. The rover came to a halt in a narrow section of the canyon, and the team disembarked, stepping out into the dusty Martian soil. They had arrived. Ahead of them, the rocky outcrop that marked the coordinates appeared. It was just a boulder at first glance, nothing special about it, but as Elon approached, a strange sensation washed over him, a feeling he couldn't shake. It was like they were being watched. Emma turned to him, her face pale. This isn't right. I don't like this." Elon took a deep breath. "We didn't come this far to turn back now." And so, with the mystery of Mars closing in around them, the team prepared to dig deeper. What lay hidden beneath the surface? And what would it mean for the future of humanity? The tension in the air was palpable, but there was no turning back now. They were about to uncover something that would change everything. The Martian air was thin, colder than the deep void of space itself. The team moved cautiously around the boulder-like formation that had drawn them to this desolate corner of Mars, their boots crunching on the red, dusty ground. The signal was now pulsing with an almost rhythmic consistency, its strength growing stronger with each passing second. Something about it felt intentional. It wasn't just a random anomaly anymore. It was a call. A challenge. A summons. Elon stood at the center of the group, his eyes scanning the surface, every muscle in his body taut with anticipation. He felt the weight of what they were about to do. Every step forward felt like stepping closer to a precipice, but there was no turning back. Whatever this was, it was now undeniable. It had led them here. It was their responsibility to uncover its secrets. Emma, holding a small portable scanner, knelt near the boulder, sweeping it with a series of scans. "The signal's source is within this rock formation," she said, her voice strained with disbelief. "Within?" Marcus asked, stepping closer. "But that's impossible. There's no way something could be emitting a signal from inside a solid mass like this." "I'm telling you," Emma replied, her eyes glued to the device, "the source is inside. We need to break it open." Elon nodded, his expression grim. The canyon was eerily quiet, the only sound the faint whirring of their equipment and the occasional distant rumble of shifting rock. It felt like the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. With a motion from Elon, the team set to work. Marcus retrieved a small explosive device, designed for mining operations. The thought of using explosives on Mars, where the environment was unforgiving and fragile, gave everyone pause, but there was no other option. The need to know, to understand, was too great. "This should be enough," Marcus muttered as he placed the charges along the boulder's base. "Once we trigger this, we'll have a clear opening." They all stepped back, and Elon gave a final nod. Marcus initiated the countdown. 3, 2, 1. The explosion echoed through the canyon, a deep, thunderous sound that reverberated off the towering cliffs. Dust and debris flew into the air as the rock face shattered, revealing an opening, an entrance into the heart of Mars itself. For a moment, there was only silence. The dust settled, and the team stood motionless, staring at the dark, gaping hole now exposed before them. A narrow passage led deeper underground, and from within, the signal pulsed stronger than ever. It felt almost alive. Elon took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. He had spent his entire life preparing for the future, preparing for this. But even he, the man who had taken humanity to Mars, felt a shiver of uncertainty run down his spine. "Let's move," he said, his voice steady, though his heart was pounding in his chest. "Stay alert. Whatever's down there, we're about to find out." The team entered the passage, their helmets casting eerie shadows against the jagged walls of the tunnel. The air inside was thick and musty, different from the dry, arid conditions outside. As they moved deeper, the signal grew louder, almost overwhelming. It was no longer a subtle hum, it was a booming, rhythmic pulse that reverberated in their bones. "Something's here," Marcus said, his voice tinged with a mix of awe and fear. This is a structure." Elon's eyes narrowed as he took in the surroundings. The walls were smooth, too smooth for natural rock. The passage was clearly artificial, crafted, not formed by erosion or geological processes. It was as if someone, or something, had built it. The very thought sent a wave of shock through him. "Keep moving," Elon urged, his mind racing. "We need to see where this leads." The passage narrowed further, forcing them to move single file. Every step felt like they were descending further into the unknown, the rhythmic signal echoing around them like a heartbeat in the dark. They had no idea who had built this, or why it had been hidden beneath the surface of Mars for so long. But the closer they got, the more they knew, this was no accident. This was a discovery that would rewrite everything they knew about the Red Planet. About space. About humanity. Finally, they reached a large cavern, its dimensions beyond anything they had anticipated. The cavern was massive, easily the size of a football field, and in the center, illuminated by strange, otherworldly light, stood a structure. It was sleek, metallic, and gleaming, its surface reflecting the dim glow of their lights. The structure was unlike anything they had ever seen, its design was both alien and impossibly advanced, as though it had been waiting for millennia to be uncovered. The signal was now deafening, a constant, pulsating hum that seemed to come from the very core of the structure. Elon's heart raced as he approached the object, his breath quickening. "What is it?" he whispered, almost to himself. "It looks like a door," Emma said, her voice strained. "But it's not just any door. This technology, it's not from Earth." The structure had no obvious controls, no buttons or levers to operate it. Instead, it seemed to be reacting to the presence of the team. As they approached, the hum grew louder, more insistent, as if calling to them. Without warning, the door slid open, slowly, deliberately, revealing an entrance. Inside, the air was thick with a strange energy. It felt heavy, charged, as though the very fabric of space itself had been altered. Elon's mind raced. He could feel the weight of what they had discovered. This was not just a new chapter in human exploration. This was a doorway to something else, something beyond their comprehension. "Stay together," he commanded. "No matter what we find in there, we stick together. We don't know what we're dealing with." With one final, steadying breath, Elon stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the unknown. As he did, the door slid shut behind him, sealing them inside. The door sealed shut behind them with an eerie hiss, the sound reverberating in the vast, cavernous space. Elon's heart raced. His breath was quick, shallow, as he scanned the surroundings. The air inside was cooler, thicker, almost like it had been sealed away for centuries. The walls of the room gleamed with an unnatural, metallic sheen, and strange symbols, alien, yet oddly familiar, etched across them, glowing faintly in the low light. The entire team stood still, their gazes fixed on the strange structure in the middle of the room. It stood like a monument to an unknown civilization, its surface sleek and smooth, almost pulsing with energy. The signal was no longer just a hum, it was a vibration, deep in their bones, an undeniable presence that seemed to come from the very heart of the structure. "Is anyone else feeling this?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I feel it too," Emma responded, her eyes wide as she looked around. "It's alive." Elon couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed a line. They had come to Mars searching for the unknown, yes, but this? This was something different. Something much bigger than they had ever anticipated. The reality of what they were standing in front of was beginning to sink in. He stepped forward, cautiously, his feet echoing on the metallic floor. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of the entire mission, the history of humankind, was pushing down on him. He knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about uncovering the past, it was about humanity's future. What if this discovery was the key to unlocking everything they had ever dreamed of? What if it held the answers to their greatest questions, or, worse, the answers to questions they hadn't yet thought to ask? Elon, wait, Emma said urgently, grabbing his arm. Look, there's something on the wall. Following her gaze, Elon noticed a shimmering, faintly illuminated panel near the structure. As he moved closer, the symbols on the wall began to shift and change, rearranging themselves like they were being activated by his presence. The screen came to life, displaying images, strange, otherworldly images, of celestial bodies, planets, and stars, far beyond the solar system. There were images of ships, too, massive, elegant vessels that glided through the cosmos as if they had always belonged there. But it wasn't just the images that were unsettling. The symbols were starting to make sense to Elon, slowly but surely, like a puzzle he was piecing together in his mind. They were written in an ancient script, one that wasn't entirely alien but had echoes of something he knew, something he had studied before. Something about these symbols reminded him of ancient myths, stories of gods and celestial beings who had visited Earth in the distant past. What is this? Marcus whispered, his voice tinged with awe. Elon took a breath, trying to steady himself. The realization hit him with the force of a freight train. It's not just a message, he murmured, his voice low, barely audible. It's a warning. The word struck the team like a thunderclap. A warning? The entire mission had been based on the premise of discovery, of uncovering the unknown. But now, as the symbols twisted and turned before their eyes, Elon understood that what they had stumbled upon was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The screen flickered, and then, for the first time, words appeared. The language wasn't Martian, it was something older, something beyond even Earth's ancient languages. But somehow, Elon understood. The symbols had unlocked the deepest recesses of his mind, allowing him to translate them. We are the Watchers. We came long ago to guide. The time has come. The reckoning approaches. The words lingered in the air, hanging like a dark cloud over the team. The truth was dawning on them, and it was far more terrifying than anything they had ever imagined. The reckoning. Emma echoed, her voice trembling. Elon's mind was spinning. The phrase was familiar. He had read about the concept of a reckoning in various ancient cultures, a time of judgment, a cosmic event that would alter the fate of worlds. But he never imagined that it could be anything more than myth. This could be about the extinction event, Marcus said, his voice shaking. The one that wiped out their civilization. The one that led to them disappearing. Elon felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He had read the theories. Some scholars believed that ancient civilizations might have had knowledge of cosmic events, disasters that could erase entire species. But to think that they were standing in the remnants of one such civilization? It was mind-boggling. He turned to his team, his face pale. We need to understand what this reckoning is. We need to know why they came here, why they left, and what we need to do to prevent it from happening to us. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with dread. The words on the screen shifted again, and a new set of images appeared, images of destruction, of planets in chaos, of stars collapsing into black holes. And in the midst of it all, there was a single figure, standing alone, holding a glowing orb in its hands. The figure was ancient, with the same otherworldly markings as the structure around them. Who is that? Emma whispered, her voice cracking. Elon didn't have an answer. But he felt a deep, gnawing fear in his gut. The figure seemed to be watching them. Waiting. And then the screen went black. The room fell into silence, the only sound the soft hum of the machinery around them. The weight of the moment settled over Elon like a lead blanket. They had uncovered something profound, something that would change humanity's understanding of the universe. But it had come with a price. They were no longer just explorers. They were participants in something much, much larger than they had ever imagined. For a moment, no one spoke. No one moved. But the fear, the uncertainty, was palpable. Elon, Emma said, breaking the silence. What does this mean? What do we do now? Elon stared at the blackened screen, his mind racing. He had always believed in humanity's potential to survive, to thrive, no matter the odds. But now, facing the knowledge that something much older and more powerful than anything they had ever encountered was watching them, he couldn't help but wonder if they were ready for what was coming. The reckoning, he murmured, is coming. And we're caught right in the middle of it. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The truth had been laid bare before them, and there was no turning back. They had opened the door. Now, they would have to face what came through it. The cavern was still. The team stood in stunned silence, their breaths shallow, minds reeling. Elon could feel the gravity of the moment pressing down on him, the weight of the unknown tightening around him like an invisible hand. The realization that they had uncovered something far greater than their wildest expectations was overwhelming. What had started as a simple exploration mission to Mars had spiraled into something much more, something terrifying, something they were not prepared for. Elon turned away from the dark screen, his eyes flicking to his team. They were still frozen, processing the same frightening information he had just digested. He could feel their uncertainty, their unease, but he couldn't afford to show it. Not now. Not when they needed him most. Okay, he said, his voice low but firm, we need to think. We need to figure out what's really going on here. Why did these watchers come to Mars? Why did they leave? Marcus shook his head, clearly struggling with what they had just uncovered. This doesn't make sense, Elon. These symbols, this warning, it feels like we've just walked into a trap. We don't even know who or what these watchers are. We don't know what this reckoning means. What if it's something that's going to happen to us? What if we're already too late? The air seemed to grow even colder, as if Mars itself were exhaling, a slow, foreboding sigh that echoed through the silence of the cavern. Emma, who had been staring at the black screen, finally turned toward Elon. What if they're not just warning us, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. What if they're waiting for us to act? To be the ones who carry out the reckoning? Elon's eyes narrowed as he processed her words. The thought was chilling. If these ancient beings were, in fact, watching them, waiting for humanity to fulfill some kind of prophecy or expectation, then what was their role in all of this? Were they the ones meant to deliver some sort of cosmic judgment? I don't know, Elon admitted, his voice taut with tension. But I do know that we can't leave here without understanding more. We can't go back to Earth until we know what we've uncovered. We need to investigate. We need to find out what happened to the civilization that built this, what led them to disappear. And we need to figure out what the reckoning really is. Because if this is something that could happen to us, we need to prepare. The team exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of their decision hanging in the air like a thick fog. They were standing at the precipice of an uncertain future, and no one could say with certainty what the next steps would be. But Elon knew one thing, they couldn't turn back. They had come this far, and they had to see it through. Mars had offered them a glimpse into something ancient and powerful, and they couldn't walk away from it now. All right, Marcus said after a long pause. We push forward. We figure out what we're dealing with. But we're doing it together, and we stick to the plan. We don't take any unnecessary risks. Elon nodded, his resolve hardening. We've already made the choice. Now, we need to find the answers. The team moved deeper into the chamber, each step feeling like they were venturing into the heart of a mystery that had been buried for eons. The metallic walls seemed to hum with a strange energy, resonating with the pulse of the structure in the center of the room. It was almost as if the building itself were alive, aware of their presence, awaiting them. The team moved cautiously, exploring the room, scanning for any further clues. But it was Emma who first noticed something strange. Her portable scanner beeped, an alarm-like sound that jolted her from her quiet concentration. "Elon, come look at this," she called, urgency in her voice. He hurried over to where she stood, staring at the floor beneath the metallic surface. There was a slight indentation, a faint outline that looked like a doorway, almost as though it had been hidden in plain sight. The scanner was picking up unusual readings, something far stronger than the ambient energy of the room. "What do you think this is?" Elon asked, crouching down beside her, his fingers brushing the outline. "I think this is a door," she said, her eyes wide. "But it's not like any door I've seen before. This looks like a mechanism, something that's been sealed for a long time. If we can open it, we might find more answers." "We have to open it," Marcus insisted. "We can't leave until we know what's behind it." Elon took a deep breath, steadying himself. The more they uncovered, the more the weight of their discoveries pressed on him. He had always known that humanity was on the brink of something new, something great. But now, with the weight of Mars' secrets bearing down on them, he felt the magnitude of their mission. He turned to Emma. "How do we open it?" Emma's fingers danced over the scanner as she tried to decipher the symbols etched into the floor. They resembled the same markings they had seen before, ancient and cryptic, yet oddly familiar. As she worked, the scanner beeped once again, and the markings on the floor began to shift, realigning themselves with the rhythm of the pulsating signal. The air around them grew thick, charged with a palpable energy. Then, with a soft mechanical hum, the floor began to slide open, revealing a staircase leading downward into the depths of the structure. The team exchanged glances, their eyes wide with anticipation and fear. This was it, the path ahead. They had no idea what awaited them, but they knew one thing for certain: there was no turning back now. "Elon," Marcus said quietly, "do you think we're ready for this?" Elon looked down at the staircase, the dark void that beckoned them forward. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he did know one thing: humanity's fate was now intertwined with Mars in a way that no one could have predicted. "Ready or not," Elon said, his voice steady, "we're going." And with that, the team stepped forward, into the darkness. The staircase seemed to stretch infinitely downward, the dark void below beckoning with an ominous promise. Elon could feel the tension in the air, thickening with each step they took. The hum of the structure pulsed louder now, reverberating through the walls and floors, as if the very heart of Mars was beating in sync with their every movement. Elon's boots echoed softly as they descended. The team was close behind, their expressions a mixture of awe, fear, and determination. He glanced over his shoulder at Emma and Marcus, both of whom seemed equally entranced by the strange, alien architecture around them. The walls here were even more intricate than the ones above. Carved into the stone-like surface were patterns that twisted and turned, almost as if they were alive, constantly shifting, growing, and evolving. "This place," Marcus began, his voice hushed, "it feels like we're stepping into something far older than just the Martian civilization. Like we're stepping into the remnants of an entire forgotten universe." Emma nodded, her gaze fixed on the walls. "It's like nothing I've ever seen before. These symbols, they keep changing as we move. It's as though they're reacting to us." But how? Elon felt it too. The strange sensation that the walls, the structure, even the air around them was alive, watching them. Responding to them. It was a feeling he couldn't shake, one that gnawed at the back of his mind, like an unanswered question hanging just out of reach. They continued their descent for what felt like an eternity. The air grew colder, thicker, as they moved deeper into the heart of the structure. The faint glow of their suits was the only light illuminating the way forward, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Elon could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, and a part of him wanted to turn around, to return to the surface, where things still made sense. But that part of him was drowned out by the relentless pull of curiosity. They had come this far, and they couldn't stop now. Finally, the staircase ended. The team stood at the threshold of a massive chamber, its size overwhelming. The room stretched out before them, its edges lost in the darkness. The ceiling was so high it seemed to disappear into the abyss. At the center of the chamber stood a massive, cylindrical structure, its surface covered in the same glowing symbols they had seen before. This was the heart of the mystery. "We found it," Elon whispered, his voice reverberating through the silent room. This is what they were hiding. The team spread out, cautiously approaching the structure. The hum of energy was deafening now, a constant vibration that seemed to resonate with every cell in their bodies. It felt as if the structure itself was breathing, alive and conscious, aware of their presence. "What is this?" Emma asked, her voice full of awe. "Is it a machine? A monument?" "I don't know," Elon admitted, his eyes scanning the intricate carvings on the surface. "But I have a feeling it's both. It looks like some kind of vessel, but the energy coming off of it is unlike anything we've ever seen." Marcus, ever the skeptic, reached out cautiously to touch the structure. The moment his fingers made contact, the entire chamber seemed to come alive. The symbols on the walls flashed with intense light, brighter than the sun, and the hum grew louder, turning into a resonant frequency that rattled their bones. "Elon!" Emma cried out, her voice panicked. "What's happening?" Elon grabbed Marcus's arm, pulling him away from the structure. The light dimmed almost immediately, and the hum softened. But something had changed. The air felt charged now, as if the chamber had been waiting for that very moment. "It's reacting to us," Elon said, his voice filled with realization. "Somehow, we've activated it. We're connected to it now. The structure is aware of us." Emma's eyes widened. "Connected? How is that possible? This thing is ancient, far older than anything we know. And yet, it's responding to us as if it's alive. This can't be real." Elon's mind raced. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a discovery about the Martian past. It was something far bigger, far more profound. The fact that this structure was reacting to them, that it had somehow sensed their presence, meant that they weren't just explorers, they were participants in something much larger, something that was unfolding before them. "Think about it," Elon said, his voice growing more intense. "The Watchers, these beings, left a message. But it wasn't just a message. It was a warning. They knew something was coming. And they wanted us to find this, to understand it. And what if that something is the reckoning?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," Elon replied, his brow furrowing. "But I have a feeling we're about to find out." They stood in the silence that followed, all of them waiting, each unsure of what the next step should be. It was a decision none of them were ready to make, yet they all knew it was inevitable. They couldn't leave now, not after all they had uncovered, not after what they had felt. Emma broke the silence, her voice steady. "We need to figure out how to access the heart of this place. There has to be more, something we can do to unlock its secrets. If this is truly what we think it is, then it could be our only chance to understand the reckoning, and maybe even prevent it." Elon nodded. She was right. If this was truly a vessel, a machine, or something else entirely, then it held the key to understanding everything. It was their only chance to learn more about what had happened to the Watchers and what the reckoning truly was. "We need to keep moving," he said, his voice resolute. "This is just the beginning. Let's see what's inside." With a shared look of determination, the team stepped forward, slowly circling the massive cylindrical structure. As they moved, the carvings on the surface began to shift, revealing new symbols, symbols that seemed to match the ones they had seen on the walls of the chamber earlier. It was as if the structure was waiting for them to unlock its final secret. And then, suddenly, a loud click echoed through the chamber. The top of the cylinder began to shift, slowly opening like the lid of an ancient chest. A low, almost mournful sound emanated from the structure as it revealed its contents. "What the hell is that?" Marcus gasped. Inside the structure was a pulsating core, a glowing orb, radiating an intense light, almost blinding. The core seemed to be alive, shifting, breathing, like a heart beating in the center of the room. And then, for the first time, they heard a voice. "The reckoning is upon you. Will you choose to survive?" The voice was not human. It was deep, resonant, and filled with an ancient, primal power. And it echoed in their minds, not through their ears. Elon's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The moment they had all feared, and yet, something more, a challenge, a test. The reckoning was real, and it was asking them a question. The path ahead was uncertain. But one thing was clear, they had no choice but to move forward. The voice, ancient and resonant, echoed in Elon's mind, sending a chill down his spine. It wasn't just a message, it was a command. The very air seemed to crackle with energy as the team stood frozen in place, their minds reeling, trying to process what had just happened. "The reckoning is upon you. Will you choose to survive?" The question hung in the air, weighty, almost suffocating. Elon felt his heartbeat quicken, the words reverberating through him like a drumbeat. The core in front of them pulsed, its light intensifying with each passing second. It was as if the structure was alive, aware of their every move, every thought. We have to answer it," Emma said, her voice a mixture of awe and fear. She was the first to speak, her eyes wide as she stared at the glowing orb in the center of the cylinder. "This isn't just a message, Elon. It's a test. A challenge. But what does it mean? What is this reckoning?" Elon swallowed hard, trying to steady his racing thoughts. The pressure of the moment was overwhelming. His mind flashed to all the possibilities, the answers they sought, the dangers they faced, the unknowns that lurked in the shadows. He knew that every decision from here on out would determine not just their fate, but possibly the fate of humanity. "We need to understand the reckoning," Elon said, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling in his mind. "If we don't, we'll be walking blind. But we can't make any decisions until we know what we're really dealing with. Whatever this is, whatever this entity is, it's not playing by the rules we know. We need to proceed carefully." "Carefully?" Marcus repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Elon, this is bigger than any of us could have imagined. What if the reckoning isn't something we can survive? What if we're too late to stop it?" "Too late for what?" Emma interjected. "We don't even know what this reckoning is. All we know is that we're standing here, in front of something that might have the answers we've been searching for. We can't walk away now. We have to trust the process." Elon nodded. His mind was racing, but there was no room for doubt. Emma was right. They had come this far, uncovered things no one on Earth had ever imagined, and now they stood on the edge of something far more significant than just the history of Mars. If they turned away now, they might never know what they had missed. As the team stared at the glowing orb, the air seemed to shift again. A low hum filled the room, as if the core was waiting for something, waiting for them to act. Elon stepped forward, his boots clicking on the cold floor. The moment his foot moved, the core's light flared brighter, its pulse growing faster, more insistent. "Elon, are you sure about this?" Marcus asked, his voice tense. "We have no idea what will happen if we engage with it." "I'm sure," Elon replied. "We can't be afraid to face whatever comes next. This is our chance to uncover the truth. We need to know what this reckoning is." The moment he spoke those words, the core shifted. The once steady hum became a rapid, rhythmic pulse, like the beat of a heart, louder and faster, almost as if it was responding to Elon's command. "Elon," Emma whispered, her eyes wide with fear and fascination. "What's happening?" The answer came not in words, but in a deep, resounding vibration that seemed to come from the very walls of the chamber. The floor beneath them trembled, and a low rumble echoed through the structure, reverberating like a distant thunderclap. And then, the light in the core dimmed, fading into an almost eerie darkness. The chamber fell silent. The ground beneath their feet shifted, and suddenly, the entire cylinder began to open, its sides sliding apart, revealing a darkened space within. A figure materialized inside the core, rising slowly from the shadows. It wasn't human. It wasn't even Martian. It was something else entirely, a being of light, of energy, a shifting form that seemed to pulse with an ancient power. The voice that spoke now was no longer in their minds, it was real, resonating in the chamber, echoing off the walls. The reckoning will come for all. The choice is yours. Will you embrace it? The being's form shimmered, its light flickering like a distant star. It was a strange combination of organic and mechanical, with patterns that resembled the symbols they had seen earlier, now glowing bright on its surface. The being looked at them, its presence overwhelming, as if it could see into their very souls. Embrace it? Elon whispered. The word echoed in his mind. What does that mean? The being's light pulsed, and it seemed to respond. The ground trembled once again, and the walls of the chamber began to shift, revealing new pathways, hidden tunnels that led deeper into the heart of Mars. Choose, the being intoned. Will you embrace the reckoning, or will you fight against it? Elon's heart raced. The gravity of the situation was sinking in. They were standing at a crossroads, at the very edge of something massive, something that could alter the course of human history. The reckoning wasn't just a warning. It was a choice. A choice they had to make, and fast. What do we do now? Marcus asked, his voice strained with fear. Elon looked at his team. They were all in this together, and the decision wasn't his to make alone. But there was something inside him, a spark of understanding, a sudden realization. The reckoning wasn't just about survival, it was about evolution, about taking a step forward into the unknown, embracing the future, no matter how terrifying it might be. We embrace it, Elon said, his voice clear and resolute. We move forward. We face it head-on. The being's form flickered, its light growing brighter. The chamber seemed to respond to Elon's words, as if the structure itself was accepting their decision. The ground trembled once more, and the chamber began to shift, revealing the true purpose of the reckoning. A path forward, deep into the heart of Mars, where the answers waited. We've made our choice, Elon said, his heart pounding. Now, we must see it through. As the team moved forward, the being's light dimmed, but it remained watching them, its gaze following their every move. The reckoning had begun. The floor beneath their boots hummed with a steady vibration, as though the very planet was responding to their decision. Elon led the team down the new path revealed by the shifting chamber, each step heavier than the last. The dim glow of their helmets was the only light they had as they descended deeper into the heart of the structure, the air growing colder with every step. The path stretched on, winding through narrow tunnels and vast, cavernous spaces that seemed to defy logic. The walls were lined with symbols, some familiar and others completely alien, shifting and warping as though alive. The further they went, the more Elon felt the sense of something watching them, a presence that was both comforting and unnerving. The reckoning wasn't just a challenge, it was an experience, one that was unfolding in real time, guiding them, testing them. How much further do you think this goes? Marcus asked, his voice echoing in the vast, empty space. I don't know, Elon replied, glancing back over his shoulder at the others. But we have to keep going. We don't have a choice. They had crossed a threshold now. There was no turning back. The structure was alive with energy, its hum growing louder as they continued deeper into the unknown. The air was thick with the scent of ancient dust, a reminder of how long this place had been abandoned, or perhaps hidden. What is this place? Emma murmured, her voice filled with awe. It's like nothing we've ever seen. It feels ancient, but at the same time, it feels like it's not meant for us. It's meant for something else. Elon nodded. He had felt the same way. This place was alien in a way that defied description, as if it had been waiting for someone, for them, to find it. But what was the purpose of it all? What was the reckoning, and why had they been chosen to face it? The path twisted and turned, and soon they reached a massive chamber, far larger than the one they had entered. The walls here were lined with intricate carvings, but they were different. These weren't just symbols, they were maps. Detailed, complex diagrams showing stars, planets, and constellations, along with lines connecting them in patterns that seemed to trace some sort of cosmic path. This is, Marcus breathed. This isn't just a Martian structure. These maps, they span the galaxy. They're showing more than just Mars. Elon's heart raced. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. The reckoning wasn't just about Mars. It was about something far larger, something on a galactic scale. This place, these maps, were the key to understanding the reckoning. It's a blueprint, Elon said, his voice barely a whisper. A map to something, something beyond anything we can comprehend. Emma stepped closer to one of the maps, her eyes scanning the intricate details. But why? What's the point of showing us this? These paths, they're leading somewhere. Elon turned to her, his mind racing. I think these maps show a network, something that spans across the stars. The reckoning is part of a much bigger picture. It's not just a Martian event. It's a galactic one. But what's the end goal? Marcus asked, his tone filled with uncertainty. Where does it all lead? I don't know, Elon admitted, running a hand through his hair. But I'm starting to think that the reckoning isn't just a moment in time. It's a process. A journey. And we're a part of it. The walls of the chamber began to shift, the maps glowing brighter as they pulsed with an otherworldly light. The glow seemed to draw them in, beckoning them to come closer, to understand the story written in the stars. Elon's mind spun with the possibilities. What if this was the answer to the questions humanity had asked for centuries? What if they had just uncovered the key to the universe itself? As they continued to study the maps, a sudden change in the air made them all pause. The hum of the structure had intensified, and the chamber began to shake. Not violently, but with a steady, rhythmic force, like the beating of a cosmic heart. The glow of the maps grew brighter, and the walls began to pulse in sync with the energy. We need to be careful, Emma said, her voice tense. Something's happening. This place is reacting to us. Elon nodded, his gut telling him that they were on the verge of something monumental. They had to act fast. Whatever was happening, they needed to be ready for it. Marcus, do you have any idea what these maps mean? Elon asked, his voice urgent. Marcus leaned closer to the maps, his brow furrowed in concentration. It looks like they're marking out points in space, places of significance, like a road map of sorts. There's one path, though, that stands out more than the others. He pointed to a distant point on the map, a small, bright star in the corner of the galaxy, connected by a line to other points. This one, it's different. It's isolated, off the main paths. But it's connected to everything. All the other paths seem to lead here. Elon's heart skipped a beat. Where is it? Marcus zoomed in on the point, his eyes widening. It's not far. It's in the Andromeda galaxy. The realization hit them all like a wave. The reckoning wasn't something that had just happened on Mars. It was something far larger, something that spanned across galaxies, across eons of time. And the path they were meant to take led beyond their wildest imagination, to a place where answers, real answers, could be found. We have to go there, Elon said, his voice filled with determination. That's where we'll find the truth. The walls of the chamber shifted again, and a loud grinding noise filled the air as a massive doorway began to open before them. The passage behind it was long and dark, but it beckoned them forward with a strange, magnetic pull. "This is it," Elon said, taking a deep breath. "The reckoning has brought us here for a reason. We have to follow this path. It's the only way forward." With no time to waste, Elon and his team moved toward the doorway, the light from the maps dimming as the chamber shifted once again, as if acknowledging their decision. They had chosen to embrace the reckoning, and now they were about to step into the unknown. As they entered the passage, the weight of the moment settled in. The reckoning was real, and the journey was far from over. But they had made their choice. And now, they had to see it through to the end. The passage ahead of them was dark and narrow, stretching far into the unknown. The walls shimmered with faint traces of bioluminescence, casting an eerie glow across their path. Every step Elon took felt heavier than the last, his thoughts swirling with the gravity of their situation. They had just crossed a threshold, an invisible line that divided the familiar from the unfathomable. Elon, Emma, Marcus, and the rest of the team walked in silence, the only sound being the soft hum of the structure around them, a constant, vibrating reminder that they were not alone. The walls seemed to breathe, their surface rippling with a strange energy, almost as if the very space around them was alive. "What do you think lies ahead?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she glanced around, clearly unsettled. Elon didn't answer right away. Instead, his eyes were fixed on the faint glow at the end of the passage. The path stretched infinitely, pulling them forward with a sense of urgency. There was no turning back now, the reckoning had already begun. "I don't know," Elon replied finally, his voice calm despite the uncertainty. "But I know we need to keep going. We've come too far to stop now." The walls seemed to press in on them, narrowing with every step. The passageway felt less like a natural formation and more like a corridor carved with purpose, an ancient path designed for those brave enough to walk it. It was as though the structure itself was guiding them, showing them the way forward, though no one truly understood where it would lead. "This place is unbelievable," Marcus muttered, his voice tinged with awe. "The architecture, the energy, everything here feels like it's been designed to test us." "But for what?" "It's not about testing us," Elon said, a quiet conviction in his voice. "It's about understanding. We're not here just to survive the reckoning. We're here to learn something bigger than ourselves. Something that could change everything we know about the universe." As they walked deeper into the structure, the atmosphere began to change. The air, which had been cool and dry, now felt heavier, charged with a strange electric hum. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with energy, as though the very fabric of Mars itself was reacting to their presence. "What is this place?" Emma asked again, her voice thick with wonder. "It feels like it's alive, like it's watching us." Elon felt the same unease, a prickling sensation at the back of his neck, as though something unseen was observing them. He had always been a man of science, driven by logic and reason, but standing in this place, surrounded by energy that defied explanation, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of discovering something that transcended science itself. "Maybe it is alive," Elon mused, his voice contemplative. "Maybe this whole structure is part of something bigger, something beyond what we can even comprehend. Whatever it is, it's clear that it's connected to the reckoning. And we need to understand it if we're going to move forward." As they walked, the path began to split into several different corridors, each one more complex than the last. The walls of each passage were lined with shifting symbols, some familiar, some completely alien. The more they looked, the more they realized that these symbols weren't just random, they were a language, a code waiting to be deciphered. "This place is some kind of archive," Marcus said, his eyes scanning the symbols on the walls. "These aren't just maps or blueprints. They're records. Histories, perhaps, of civilizations that came before us." "Civilizations?" Emma asked, raising an eyebrow. "How is that possible? We've never seen any evidence of intelligent life on Mars." "I don't think these civilizations were on Mars," Elon replied, his voice growing more intense. "I think these records span galaxies. They're showing us the history of the universe. And the reckoning, it's a part of that history. The team continued to walk, their minds heavy with the weight of this new realization. The reckoning wasn't just an event, it was a universal truth, something that had been set in motion long before they arrived on Mars. They were mere participants in a much larger game, one whose rules they had yet to understand. The path eventually led them to a massive, open chamber, its ceiling stretching far above them, disappearing into darkness. In the center of the room stood an enormous structure, a glowing, crystalline monument that pulsed with an otherworldly light. It was unlike anything they had seen before. The energy emanating from it was tangible, almost alive, and it drew them in, as if beckoning them to come closer. "This is it," Elon whispered, his voice full of awe. "This is the heart of the reckoning." They stepped closer to the monument, the air thick with the energy it radiated. The closer they got, the more they could feel it, an undeniable presence, a force that seemed to speak to them without words. It was as though the monument was alive, aware of their arrival, awaiting them. As they reached the base of the monument, the ground beneath their feet trembled once more. A deep, resonant hum filled the room, vibrating through their bodies, reverberating in their bones. The crystal began to shift, its surface rippling as if something inside was awakening. "What's happening?" Marcus asked, his voice strained. "I think it's reacting to us," Elon said, stepping forward. "It's asking us to make a choice. It's time for the next step." Without warning, a blinding flash of light erupted from the crystal, filling the chamber with an intense, pure energy. Elon's heart raced as the light enveloped them, and for a moment, everything around them seemed to disappear, the structure, the monument, even Mars itself. They were suspended in a realm of pure light, a place beyond space and time. Then, as quickly as it had come, the light vanished. The chamber was once again silent. The crystal stood before them, its surface now completely still. But something had changed. The air felt different, charged with a new energy, a new purpose. They had crossed a threshold, and now they stood at the precipice of the next phase of the reckoning. Elon looked at his team, his eyes filled with determination. "This is it. We've crossed the threshold. There's no going back now." The reckoning had begun in earnest. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The blinding light that had enveloped them moments ago still lingered in their minds, as though the very fabric of their perception had been rewritten. Elon stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the echoes of the energy they had just encountered. The crystal stood silent now, its glow fading to a soft, ethereal shimmer, like the last embers of a dying star. But it wasn't just the physical sensation that had shifted. Something deeper had happened. Something intangible. What just happened? Emma asked, her voice shaky, as though the aftershock of the event had unsettled her mind. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of what they had just experienced. "Where are we now? What was that?" Elon's gaze remained fixed on the crystal, his mind racing. He could feel it, an unseen connection, a thread that had tied him to this place and the cosmic force that had just made its presence known. They had crossed into something far beyond their understanding. The reckoning had awakened something that was far bigger than Mars, bigger than humanity, and it had changed them, irrevocably. "I don't know exactly," Elon admitted, his voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling inside him. "But I think the reckoning isn't just a test for us. It's something more profound. It's an awakening. For all of us." "What does that mean?" Marcus asked, stepping closer to the crystal. His brow furrowed as he tried to make sense of the surreal experience they had just gone through. "It means we've been called to do more than just survive this. We've been called to understand it," Elon replied, the weight of his words sinking in. "This is not just about Mars or our journey here. This is about the universe, the very fabric of existence itself. The reckoning is a shift in consciousness, and we're standing at the precipice of that shift." The walls of the chamber began to hum once again, this time with a different energy, deeper, more resonant. The vibrations were more intense, as though the structure itself was coming alive in response to their realization. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and for a moment, Elon felt a surge of fear. He had prepared for many things, but not this. Then, the crystal pulsed, sending a wave of energy that rippled through the air, touching everything in the room. The light from the crystal didn't blind them this time, it enveloped them, wrapping around their bodies like a protective aura. And as it did, images began to flood their minds, visions of stars, galaxies, and alien landscapes that defied all logic. Elon stumbled back, clutching his head as the visions intensified. The images weren't just of Mars or even their solar system. They were of faraway worlds, civilizations long gone, and beings that were as ancient as time itself. These weren't just memories, they were memories of the cosmos, of an intelligence that had existed before humanity had even begun to comprehend the stars. And then, one vision stood out, a massive, swirling vortex in space, a black hole that seemed to pulse with life. The vortex was surrounded by symbols, ancient and familiar, the same symbols they had seen on the walls of the chamber. And in the center of it all was a figure, tall, radiant, and impossibly powerful. A being whose presence filled the void, whose power shaped the very fabric of reality. The vision faded, leaving Elon breathless. He looked around at his team, his heart racing. Emma, Marcus, and the others were all breathing heavily, their eyes wide with shock. They had all seen it. They had all shared the vision. What was that? Emma whispered, her voice trembling. That, Elon said, struggling to steady his breath, was the key. The being we saw, that's what the reckoning is leading to. A force, a presence, that transcends everything we know. It's part of a greater cosmic order. And we're meant to understand it. The vibrations in the room intensified again, and the crystal began to glow with a new intensity. The walls shifted, revealing new paths, hidden corridors that had been sealed off before. The reckoning wasn't just about understanding the past, it was about moving forward into the unknown. The air grew thick with anticipation, the team's senses on high alert as they began to move toward one of the newly revealed pathways. There was no need to speak, everyone knew that they had just uncovered something monumental, something that could change everything. This is it, Elon said, his voice firm and resolute. This is where we're meant to go. As they moved down the newly revealed path, the atmosphere around them began to change once again. The air felt lighter, charged with the kind of energy that only existed in the most advanced technologies, or in the most ancient of secrets. The walls around them seemed to breathe, their surfaces shifting and warping, reacting to their presence as though they were part of the journey themselves. The path led them into another vast chamber, its walls lined with intricate designs and symbols that seemed to glow with an inner fire. In the center of the room was another crystal, even larger than the first, its surface crackling with energy. This is it, Marcus said, his voice reverent as he gazed at the massive crystal. This is where it all comes together. Elon stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. The reckoning was no longer a distant event, it was happening now, in real time. And the answers they had been searching for were just ahead. He reached out and placed his hand on the surface of the crystal. A surge of energy shot through his body, sending a jolt of awareness to every part of his being. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. The reckoning was not just about Mars, not just about Earth. It was about the universe itself, and they had just uncovered the first step in a journey that could redefine existence. The crystal pulsed once more, and a deep, resonant voice echoed in their minds. It wasn't a voice they heard with their ears, but with their very souls. It was ancient, yet timeless, benevolent, yet powerful. The reckoning has begun. You are the chosen ones. The path forward is unknown, but you must walk it. To understand the cosmos, you must first understand yourselves. The voice faded, and the chamber fell silent. Elon stood motionless, his heart still racing. They were no longer just explorers. They were part of something much greater, something cosmic, something that transcended time and space. The reckoning was no longer just a test. It was a call to action. "Let's move," Elon said, his voice steady. "The universe is waiting for us." And with that, they stepped forward, into the unknown. The air felt charged with a new sense of purpose as Elon and his team advanced deeper into the unknown. The echoes of the ancient voice still lingered in their minds, a subtle hum that resonated deep within their bones. They had crossed another threshold, and everything that had once felt familiar was now shrouded in the mystery of the universe. The reckoning wasn't just a test for humanity, it was a cosmic call to action, an invitation to unlock the secrets of existence itself. Elon paused at the edge of the massive chamber they had entered, his gaze sweeping over the crystal structure before them. It was even more magnificent than the one they had encountered before, its edges shimmering with a silver-blue light that seemed to pulse with life. The surface of the crystal was covered in intricate carvings, symbols and patterns that looked like they had been etched into its surface by hands that no human could have ever known. This is it," Elon murmured, his voice filled with awe. "This is the key to everything." "Everything?" Marcus asked, his voice full of skepticism. "You really think this crystal holds the answers to all our questions?" "I know it does," Elon said, his tone firm, even as the uncertainty in the room seemed to increase. "We've seen enough to know that the reckoning isn't just about survival. It's about understanding what came before us, what's happening now, and what will come after us." The team was silent as they absorbed his words, each of them processing the enormity of the situation in their own way. Emma's eyes scanned the chamber, taking in the vastness of the room, the glowing crystal at its heart. The walls around them seemed to stretch endlessly upward, their surfaces covered in ancient, alien writing. "This place, it feels like it's not meant for us," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It feels like we're intruding." "You're not intruding," a voice said suddenly, so clear that it made them all jump. It wasn't a sound from the walls or the crystal. It was a voice, human, or at least it sounded like it, speaking directly to their minds. "You are here because you were meant to be. The reckoning has chosen you, and now you must choose to move forward." Everyone stood motionless, staring at Elon, as though waiting for him to say something. But for once, he was silent, his thoughts racing. "The reckoning, is this what it's all about?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking. "Are we really being called to something beyond what we ever imagined?" "Yes," Elon answered simply. "But it's more than that. It's not just a test of survival. It's a test of understanding, of awareness. The reckoning is a cosmic event, but it's also deeply personal. It's about expanding beyond our limitations, seeing the universe through a lens we've never even considered before." The voice spoke again, its tone calm but filled with an undeniable gravity. "You have come far, but the journey ahead will not be easy. The choice before you is not just to explore, but to awaken. Awaken to the truth that the universe is far more vast, far more complex, and far more interconnected than you can fathom. You are the key to unlocking its mysteries. But you must be willing to sacrifice everything you once knew to see the truth." Elon's heart raced as the weight of the voice's words settled in. He looked at his team, each of them staring back at him with a mixture of fear, awe, and determination. They had all come here seeking answers, but now, the question wasn't just about what the reckoning was, it was about who they would become in the process. "What kind of sacrifices are we talking about?" Emma asked cautiously, her eyes narrowing as she focused on Elon. "What if we're not ready for this?" "I don't know," Elon said, his voice softer now, tinged with uncertainty. "But I do know that we've come this far, and there's no turning back now. We've been chosen, and whatever happens next, we have to be ready to face it." Another surge of energy flooded the room, and the crystal began to glow even brighter, its light growing in intensity. It wasn't blinding this time, though. Instead, it felt as though the light was illuminating something hidden within each of them, something they had yet to fully comprehend. The walls around them shifted once more, revealing a large portal that had not been visible before. It wasn't just a doorway, it was an entrance to something much larger, something beyond the limits of this chamber, beyond the very boundaries of Mars itself. "This is it," Elon said, a renewed sense of purpose filling his voice. "This is the path forward. The reckoning is not just a test, it's a transformation. We have to walk through that portal, and when we do, we will step into the unknown." The air in the room grew thick with anticipation as the team stepped closer to the portal. The energy coming from the crystal seemed to guide them forward, pushing them to embrace what lay ahead. As they approached, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble again, and a low, resonant hum filled the room. The portal shimmered, its surface rippling as though it were made of liquid light. Elon felt a pull, a deep, magnetic force urging him to step through. It wasn't just his curiosity driving him now, it was something deeper, something primal. He knew, without a doubt, that whatever lay on the other side of that portal would change everything. "Are we ready for this?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with quiet fear. "We have no choice," Elon replied, stepping forward. "We've been called. And now we answer." With that, he stepped into the portal, the rest of the team following closely behind. The moment they crossed the threshold, the world around them seemed to disintegrate. Time and space no longer had any meaning. They were no longer on Mars. They were no longer anywhere. They had crossed into the unknown, and the reckoning was about to unfold in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The moment they stepped through the portal, the world as they knew it shattered. Time bent and stretched, slipping through their fingers like water. The sensation was disorienting, an overwhelming sense of vertigo as their surroundings morphed and contorted in ways that defied all logic. It felt like they were caught in the very fabric of space, stretched thin, and then thrust back together in a way that left them breathless. When the disorienting pull of the portal finally released them, they were no longer standing in the chamber on Mars. In fact, they were no longer even on Mars. The sky above them was a deep, inky black, dotted with countless stars, each one far brighter than any star they had ever seen. The air was thick, charged with an energy that felt almost alive. It hummed with a rhythmic pulse that seemed to sync with their own heartbeats. Where are we?" Emma whispered, her voice filled with awe and trepidation. She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar landscape. Elon took a cautious breath, his gaze darting around as he absorbed the vastness of their surroundings. The land was barren, yet strangely beautiful, an endless horizon of jagged mountains, towering crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with the same energy as the portal, and a strange, glowing mist that hung in the air like a veil, obscuring parts of the landscape. "I don't know," Elon said, his voice soft but filled with a sense of wonder. "But I think we've just stepped into something much bigger than anything we could have imagined." Marcus, ever the skeptic, narrowed his eyes as he looked around. "This doesn't feel like any place we've ever been. This is wrong. It's too alien." "It's not wrong, Marcus," Elon replied, his voice steady. "It's just different. We've crossed into another plane, another dimension, or maybe even another reality. We're not on Mars anymore. We're in something beyond our understanding, something that's been waiting for us." The team stood in stunned silence, their eyes scanning the vast unknown in front of them. The feeling of being completely out of place was palpable. They had all expected the reckoning to be a test, but this was beyond anything they had prepared for. The glowing mist shifted, and suddenly, a shape appeared in the distance, something large, towering, and moving. At first, it was just a blur, but as it drew closer, the shape became clearer. It was a figure, humanoid in form, but impossibly tall and slender, with a shimmering, translucent skin that seemed to reflect the stars around them. The figure moved with an eerie grace, its every step seemingly in sync with the pulse of the landscape. "What the hell is that?" Marcus breathed, his voice a mixture of disbelief and fear. Elon took a step forward, his curiosity outweighing his caution. "I don't know, but I think it's our guide." The figure grew closer, and as it did, its form became clearer. It was unlike any being they had ever seen. Its face was smooth, almost featureless, but its eyes were impossibly large, glowing with a light that seemed to pierce through them. The being radiated a sense of peace, yet there was an overwhelming power in its presence, something that made even Elon, who had faced down countless challenges in his life, feel small. When the being finally reached them, it stopped, its gaze locking onto Elon. For a moment, there was silence, a profound stillness that hung in the air. Then, it spoke. "You are the ones who have been chosen." Its voice was not a sound, but a sensation, something that resonated deep within their minds, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was calm, soothing, yet filled with the weight of millennia. Elon felt a shiver run down his spine, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of the encounter. The reckoning was no longer just a cosmic event. It was a meeting, an awakening, a recognition that they were not alone in the universe, and that they had been selected for something far greater. Chosen for what? Elon asked, his voice steady but full of wonder. What is this place? Why are we here? The being's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, and the pulse of energy in the air intensified. This is the nexus. The center of all realities. The point where the threads of existence converge. You are here because the reckoning has begun, and you are the catalysts for the change that will come. Catalysts for change? Emma echoed, her voice filled with disbelief. What kind of change? The universe is in a state of imbalance, the being explained, its gaze never leaving Elon. The reckoning is the moment when the fabric of existence is tested. You, the ones who have crossed into this realm, are the ones who will either bring order to the chaos or succumb to its destruction. The choice is yours. Elon felt the weight of the words settle into his chest, a crushing realization that everything they had done up until this point had been leading to this moment. They weren't just exploring Mars or seeking answers, they were about to play a pivotal role in shaping the future of the entire universe. We've been chosen to bring balance? Marcus asked, his voice tinged with skepticism and fear. How are we supposed to do that? We're just people from Earth. You are not just people, the being said, its tone almost affectionate, yet filled with an undeniable power. You are the embodiment of a force that transcends your understanding. The reckoning has awakened something within you. Something that will guide you as you face the challenges ahead. Elon took a deep breath, absorbing the gravity of what was happening. The universe wasn't just a vast, incomprehensible void, it was a living, breathing entity, and they were now at the center of its most important event in millennia. The reckoning was not just about survival, it was about transformation. What do we need to do? Elon asked, his voice steady, filled with purpose. The being paused, as though considering the question. The first step has already been taken. You have crossed into the nexus. The next step is to seek the source. It is hidden within the fabric of this reality, but it is the key to unlocking the next phase of the reckoning. Find it, and the future will unfold. With that, the being began to fade, its form dissipating into the mist as it vanished into the ether. The air around them grew still once again, but the weight of its words lingered, heavy in the silence. Elon turned to his team, his eyes burning with newfound determination. We have to find the source. This is just the beginning, and the reckoning will guide us to what comes next. And so, with no map, no clear path, and only the faintest understanding of what lay ahead, they began their journey into the unknown, into the heart of the reckoning itself. The days that followed were unlike anything Elon and his team had ever experienced. The Nexus, this strange, uncharted realm, had a way of distorting time. The sun never set, but the landscape seemed to shift as if it were caught between worlds. One moment, they were walking across barren plains of jagged rock, and the next, they found themselves in a dense forest of glowing, otherworldly trees. The air was thick with an energy that felt alive, pulsating, as if the very ground beneath their feet was watching them, waiting. But despite the otherworldly beauty of the place, they couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of urgency. The voice of the being, the guide they had encountered, still echoed in their minds: seek the source, and the reckoning will unfold. The source. Elon had to admit, even to himself, that he didn't know exactly what it was. What was the source? How could they find it? What would it mean for the reckoning? The questions kept mounting, but every step they took seemed to lead them into more uncertainty. There was no clear path, no map to follow. They were essentially wandering through an alien realm, relying on instincts and fragmented clues to find something that might not even exist. Do you really think this source is real? Marcus asked one evening, his voice tired, eyes scanning the strange, shifting skyline. They had been walking for hours, each step seemingly as futile as the last. What if it's just another cosmic riddle? Elon stopped, looking back at Marcus, and for the first time, he felt a flicker of doubt himself. It wasn't like him to question what he believed. He had always been driven by certainty, by a vision of the future that others couldn't yet see. But here, in the Nexus, the rules were different. The laws of physics, of logic, everything they knew was constantly shifting. And the truth that had once felt so obvious now seemed distant, hidden behind layers of mystery. It's real, Marcus, Elon said, though his voice lacked the usual conviction. It has to be. We've come too far, seen too much. The reckoning isn't just a test of survival. It's about understanding. We're being guided, whether we understand it or not. Emma, who had been walking ahead, stopped and turned to look at the group. Her face was shadowed by the dim glow of the alien landscape. Elon's right, she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion in her eyes. We've been through too much to turn back now. Whatever the source is, we have to find it. It's the only way forward. Just as the words left her mouth, the air around them began to vibrate, a low hum that grew steadily louder, reverberating in their bones. The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly, sending ripples through the mist that surrounded them. Elon's heart skipped a beat. He could feel it, a shift in the atmosphere. This was no ordinary vibration. It was the pulse of something vast, something ancient. It was as if the very fabric of the Nexus had recognized them, acknowledged their presence. The source, Elon murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. It's close. The team gathered closer, their eyes wide, searching the horizon for any sign of movement, any clue as to where they should go next. The humming grew louder, and then, without warning, the ground before them split open. A massive fissure appeared, wide enough to swallow an entire building, its edges glowing with the same radiant energy that had marked the crystal they'd encountered earlier. From the depths of the fissure, a brilliant light poured forth, blinding them for a moment. The pulse in the air intensified, and the very atmosphere seemed to hum with energy. There, in the center of the fissure, was a massive, floating orb, its surface a liquid mirror, reflecting the stars above. It hovered effortlessly, suspended in the air, as if held up by an invisible force. Elon's breath caught in his throat as he took a step forward. He knew, instinctively, that this was it. This was the source. We found it, Emma breathed, her voice filled with awe. The orb shimmered, and as they drew closer, it began to ripple, like the surface of a pond disturbed by a single stone. The reflection within it changed, morphing into images, flashes of distant galaxies, chaotic bursts of color, and glimpses of what could only be described as otherworldly beings. The images moved too quickly to decipher, but one thing was clear: they were witnessing the very fabric of the universe, its creation, its destruction, its transformation. Elon felt a pull in his chest, a magnetic force drawing him closer to the orb. His legs moved of their own accord, each step heavier than the last. He reached out a hand, and as his fingers brushed the surface of the orb, a rush of information flooded his mind. It wasn't just images, it was knowledge, a flood of understanding that overwhelmed him. It was as if the entire history of the universe, every thought, every decision, every action ever taken, had suddenly been condensed into a single moment. The weight of it nearly brought him to his knees. He saw glimpses of other worlds, civilizations rising and falling, stars being born and dying. He saw the reckoning in its true form, not just as a test for humanity, but as a cosmic event that stretched across all of existence. He understood, in that brief instant, that the reckoning was not about any single planet, any single species. It was about the balance of the entire universe, about the constant cycle of creation and destruction, and about the forces that govern it all. The images faded, and Elon stumbled back, breathless, his mind reeling from the sheer magnitude of what he had just experienced. He looked around at his team, but they seemed to be in the same state of stunned silence, their eyes wide as they processed the flood of knowledge they had just witnessed. I saw it, Elon whispered, his voice hoarse. The reckoning. It's not just about us. It's about the entire universe. Emma stepped forward, her face pale, but her expression resolute. What do we do now? Elon took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had seen the truth, but now the real challenge began. The reckoning was not something that could be easily understood or controlled. It was a force, a cosmic event that was as much a part of the universe as the stars themselves. But the key was in their hands. We move forward, Elon said, his voice gaining strength with every word. We've seen the source, and we know what it means. Now, we have to make our choice. The universe is waiting for us to act. And so, with the weight of the universe on their shoulders, they prepared to face whatever came next. The reckoning had begun, but they were no longer passive participants. They were its champions, its challengers, and its future. The air around them was still buzzing with energy, the pulse of the source resonating in their bodies. Every step they took felt like a leap into the unknown, as though the very ground beneath them had been replaced by a soft, invisible force. The world around them shimmered, the landscape shifting again, as if in response to their presence. Elon paused for a moment, his mind racing. The knowledge he had gained from touching the source weighed heavily on him, but it wasn't just the cosmic revelations that consumed his thoughts. It was the choice. The choice that now loomed before them. The being they had encountered earlier had made it clear, you are the catalysts for the change that will come. But what change? What would their decision mean for the universe, for their world, for humanity? We can't afford to make the wrong choice, Elon muttered to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma walked up beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. She had always been the optimist, the one who believed in the possibility of the impossible. But even she couldn't shake the gravity of their situation. I think we've already crossed that line, she said, her voice low but filled with determination. The reckoning is happening, and there's no going back. All we can do now is embrace it. Marcus, who had been silent for the last few moments, spoke up, his voice filled with an underlying tone of skepticism. What exactly are we embracing, though? We've seen the source, but we still don't fully understand what it is or what it means for us. How do we know that the reckoning isn't something that could destroy everything we've worked for? Elon looked at Marcus, his expression solemn. That's what we have to figure out. But we've been given a choice. We've been given the power to shape what comes next. We can either try to control it, harness it, or we can let it unfold on its own. But whatever we choose will have consequences. The weight of the decision settled in, like a stone sinking deep in their stomachs. They were no longer just explorers, adventurers, or even mere survivors. They were standing on the precipice of something far greater than they had ever imagined, and the power to alter the course of history now lay in their hands. I don't think the universe is waiting for us to make the right choice, Emma said, her voice filled with a quiet understanding. I think it's waiting for us to choose. To take action. The reckoning isn't about choosing between good and evil, it's about change. And change is messy. It's unpredictable. But that's the only way forward. Elon nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the shimmering orb that still hovered in the distance. He could feel it, the force of the reckoning, the energy that pulsed through the very fabric of the nexus. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. It was chaos, yes, but also potential. A blank canvas. We've always been about pushing boundaries, Elon said, his voice growing more confident with each passing moment. We've always embraced the unknown. Maybe that's what the reckoning is all about. It's not about avoiding destruction or chaos. It's about finding a way to thrive in the face of it. The team fell silent for a moment, each of them lost in their own thoughts. The decision they faced was unlike any they had ever encountered. There were no guarantees, no clear answers. But the reckoning was real, and they had a chance, an opportunity, to shape it. Let's do it, Marcus said, his voice steady. Let's embrace the reckoning. Let's see where it takes us. With that, the decision was made. They would no longer stand idly by, waiting for the universe to reveal its next move. They would take charge. They would act. But as they moved forward, a strange feeling crept into the air. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like a shadow brushing against the edges of their consciousness. The pulse of the nexus seemed to fluctuate, the once constant hum now wavering, as if responding to their decision. Elon stopped in his tracks. Did anyone else feel that? Emma turned to him, her brow furrowed. Yeah, I felt it too. It's like the energy is shifting. The ground beneath their feet trembled again, more violently this time. The air around them grew thick, charged with an unsettling energy that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. The orb, the source, began to pulse erratically, sending out ripples of energy that echoed across the landscape. Something was happening. Something was changing. We've done it, Elon said, a mix of awe and apprehension in his voice. The reckoning is responding to our choice. Just as the words left his mouth, the landscape shifted violently. The ground cracked open in several places, sending jagged columns of rock shooting into the sky. The sky above them twisted, the stars flickering in and out of view as if being swallowed by some cosmic force. The very fabric of reality seemed to be warping, bending around them as though it were struggling to maintain its shape. And then, in an instant, everything stopped. The world was still. Silent. The energy in the air had disappeared, leaving only an eerie calm. What just happened? Marcus asked, his voice strained with disbelief. Elon didn't answer at first. He was staring at the source, his mind racing. The energy was gone, but the orb remained suspended in the air. It wasn't reacting anymore. It was almost, waiting. I think we've crossed a line, Elon said slowly, his voice heavy with realization. We've made our choice. But now, the reckoning has begun in earnest. We're no longer just participants. We're the ones shaping this event. The silence stretched on, the calm before the storm, as they stood at the center of a world that was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. The reckoning was here, and its full power was about to be unleashed. And they, as its chosen catalysts, would be the ones to face its consequences. The silence lingered for a long time, a strange stillness that seemed to stretch the very fabric of the nexus. The air was thick, heavy with something they couldn't quite name. The hum, the pulse of energy that had once been their constant companion, was gone, leaving behind an unsettling void. The source still hovered before them, a faint, shimmering orb in the sky, but it was as if the universe itself had taken a deep breath and held it. Elon's heart raced. He felt like they were standing at the edge of something monumental, something they couldn't control. And yet, despite the calm, a sense of impending chaos simmered beneath the surface, like the stillness before a storm. What just happened? Marcus's voice was tinged with fear now, his eyes darting around nervously as if expecting the very ground beneath them to collapse. Elon didn't have an answer. He couldn't explain it. But one thing was clear, their choice had triggered something. The reckoning wasn't just a distant event anymore. It was here. And it was responding to their decision. The ground beneath them rumbled again, this time more violently. The earth cracked, sending shockwaves through the air, knocking them off balance. Dust and debris filled the atmosphere as jagged rocks shot up from the fissures in the ground, their tips glowing with an eerie light. Emma stumbled, clutching at Elon for support as the landscape seemed to twist and bend around them. "This is it," she gasped, her face pale. "We've unleashed something we can't even comprehend." Elon's thoughts raced, his mind scrambling to make sense of the chaos unfolding around them. The energy of the Nexus was growing stronger again, but it was different now. It was no longer the steady, predictable hum they had come to know. It was erratic, unpredictable. A force that was as ancient as the universe itself, reshaping everything in its wake. "We have to find out what's causing this," Elon said, his voice grim. "We need answers. The reckoning is happening, but we don't know what it's leading to. We don't know how to stop it, or if we even can." They moved forward cautiously, stepping over the fractured ground as the sky overhead shimmered with an unnatural glow. The stars had vanished, replaced by swirling patterns of light and dark, as if the very fabric of reality was beginning to tear. Then, as they walked, a sudden force struck them from behind. They were thrown forward, the ground beneath them cracking open as the energy surged. Elon's heart stopped as he saw a massive rift open up just ahead, the air around it warping, twisting as though it were a mirror shattered by a cosmic impact. "This isn't just an event," Elon muttered, his voice filled with dread. "The reckoning is unraveling reality itself." The team stood frozen, staring at the rift, which seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. It was as if the Nexus, the realm they had come to know, was disintegrating before their eyes. Time itself felt like it was breaking apart, the past, present, and future swirling together in a chaotic dance. Suddenly, the rift expanded, sending a shockwave of energy in every direction. The very air vibrated, warping, distorting. The ground beneath them seemed to stretch and twist like rubber, and for a brief moment, Elon felt as if he were floating, untethered from the physical world. "This can't be good," Marcus said, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and disbelief. "We've triggered something we can't control." "We need to get closer," Elon said, determination flickering in his eyes. He didn't know how much time they had before the rift consumed everything, but he was certain they needed to understand what was happening, before it was too late. The team began to move again, carefully, their eyes locked on the rift. The closer they got, the more the air seemed to thrum with power, the energy vibrating through their bones. It felt like they were approaching the very heart of the reckoning. Then, as they reached the edge of the rift, something strange happened. The energy shifted. The chaos they had been feeling, the distortion of reality, began to subside. Slowly, the air grew still again, the hum of the Nexus returning, though it was softer now, almost imperceptible. Elon felt a chill creep up his spine as the rift seemed to stabilize. It was as if it had found a new form of equilibrium, a state of balance amidst the chaos. And yet, despite the calm, something was undeniably different. "This is it," Elon whispered, his voice barely audible. "This is what the reckoning was meant to be. Not destruction, but transformation." Emma looked at him, her face filled with uncertainty. "But how do we control it? How do we make sure it doesn't consume us all?" Elon didn't have an answer. He couldn't explain what was happening, but he knew that their journey had taken them to the very heart of the reckoning. They had made their choice, and now they had to face the consequences. Suddenly, a figure appeared from the edge of the rift. At first, it was a silhouette, barely discernible against the shifting energy, but as it stepped forward, the figure became clearer. It was tall, humanoid, with an ethereal glow emanating from its form. The being's eyes shone like twin stars, piercing through the distortion of reality as if unaffected by the chaos around it. "Who are you?" Elon demanded, his voice filled with both curiosity and caution. The being did not answer immediately. Instead, it raised one hand, and the rift began to pulse once more, sending waves of energy into the air. The ground trembled beneath them, but this time, the energy felt different, more purposeful, as if it was being channeled towards something. "This is the choice you have made," the figure finally spoke, its voice like 1,000 whispers. "The reckoning is not an event. It is a cycle, a process of transformation. You have triggered its awakening. And now, you must face its consequences. Elon's heart raced. Consequences? What does that mean? The being did not respond immediately. Instead, it stretched out its other hand, and the rift widened, revealing a vision, a swirling maelstrom of energy, a galaxy in flux, stars being born and destroyed in rapid succession. The reckoning was more than they had realized. It was a force of nature, not something that could be controlled, but something that would alter everything it touched. The universe is evolving, the being said, its voice calm and final. The reckoning will reshape all of existence. But the outcome will depend on your actions. You are the catalysts. Your choices will determine the fate of everything. Elon swallowed hard, understanding the weight of what was at stake. The reckoning had begun, but it was far from over. They had set it into motion, but now it was up to them to navigate its tumultuous course. The being's figure began to fade, its form dissolving into the rift as if it were one with the very energy that had summoned it. But before it disappeared completely, it left behind one final message. Choose wisely. The reckoning is not just about survival. It is about creation. What will you build? And with that, the rift closed, leaving only silence in its wake. The rift closed, but its presence lingered in the air like the echo of a storm that had just passed. Elon stood still, his eyes tracing the space where the rift had been, unable to shake the weight of the being's words. Choose wisely. The reckoning is not just about survival. It is about creation. What will you build? The questions hung in the air like a dense fog. What did it mean to create? What was their role in this vast, cosmic event that had been set into motion? And how could they, mere humans, have any say in the fate of the universe itself? The team remained silent for a long while, each of them lost in their own thoughts, grappling with the enormity of what they had just encountered. The reckoning was no longer some distant prophecy, it was here, unfolding before them. They had triggered it, and now, they had to face whatever came next. Elon turned to the others, his voice steady but filled with a quiet urgency. We need to figure out what happens next. The reckoning is more than just a cataclysmic event. It's a process. A transformation. But into what, we don't know. Emma, who had been standing a few feet away, looked up at him, her face pale but resolute. The being said we're the catalysts. That means we have a role to play in whatever comes next. Marcus stepped forward, his brow furrowed with concern. But what role is that, exactly? We don't even know what this transformation looks like. What if it's not something we can control? What if it's something we can't survive? We won't know unless we keep moving forward, Elon said, his voice calm but firm. We're already in the thick of it. There's no turning back now. All we can do is learn as we go. Understand what the reckoning really is and how we can shape it, or at least survive it. They didn't have answers, but they couldn't afford to stop. They had crossed a line, and now they were part of something much bigger than themselves. The reckoning wasn't just a force of destruction, it was a force of change, and whether they liked it or not, they had a hand in it. The group began to move forward, navigating the cracked ground as the air around them shimmered with residual energy. The environment had shifted dramatically. Mars, their home, was no longer the red, barren wasteland they had known. It had become something else, a world on the verge of transformation. The very atmosphere seemed to hum with potential. As they walked, the landscape around them seemed to warp and shift. Mountains rose and fell like waves on the ocean, while the sky flickered with strange lights and shadows, as though the fabric of reality itself was being remade. Time felt distorted here, as though they were moving through a space that existed outside the normal flow of events. This place, Emma murmured, her voice filled with awe and trepidation. It feels like we're in a dream. Like everything is in flux, waiting to settle into something new. It's not just a dream, Marcus said, his voice tense. This is real. Whatever this is, it's happening now. And it's affecting everything. The entire universe is shifting. Elon glanced at his team, their faces a mixture of fear, awe, and resolve. They were no longer just explorers on Mars. They were players in a cosmic event of unimaginable scale. And whether they were ready or not, they had to face whatever came next. As they moved deeper into the shifting landscape, they saw something ahead that made them stop in their tracks, a massive structure, rising out of the ground like a monument to something ancient and incomprehensible. It was made of a material that shimmered with an iridescent glow, unlike anything they had ever seen. Its shape was both alien and familiar, like a fusion of organic and mechanical forms. "What is that?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," Elon replied, his eyes narrowing. "But it's not a natural formation. This is something else. Something the reckoning is revealing." They approached cautiously, each step filled with uncertainty. As they neared the structure, they saw that it was covered in intricate patterns, symbols that seemed to shift and change as they moved closer. It was like the structure itself was alive, breathing, responding to their presence. "Are we meant to go inside?" Emma asked, her voice tense with a mixture of fear and fascination. "I don't know," Elon said again, his mind racing. "But I think this is part of the process. We've triggered something, and now it's guiding us towards something. Maybe this is the next step." As they reached the entrance of the structure, a faint light emanated from within, casting an otherworldly glow across the landscape. The air around them seemed to hum with energy, and Elon could feel the pulse of the reckoning deep within his chest, as if it were calling them forward. "Let's go," Elon said, his voice filled with determination. "We have to keep moving forward. We need answers. We need to understand what this is and what it means for us." They stepped into the structure, the air inside thick with energy. The walls seemed to shift as they moved, as though they were walking through a living organism. The deeper they went, the more intense the energy became, until it was almost unbearable. And then, they reached the heart of the structure. In the center of the room was a massive, glowing crystal. It pulsed with the same erratic energy they had felt before, but now it was clearer, sharper. The crystal seemed to contain the very essence of the reckoning itself. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a perfect representation of the force they had set into motion. "This is it," Elon whispered. "This is the source of the reckoning. This is what we've been looking for." But as he stepped forward to examine the crystal, something strange happened. The air around them shimmered, and for a split second, Elon felt like he was falling, like he was being pulled into the crystal itself. "No," he muttered, his voice strained. This can't be happening." The crystal pulsed again, and suddenly, Elon's mind was flooded with visions. Visions of distant galaxies, of civilizations rising and falling, of stars being born and dying in the blink of an eye. The reckoning wasn't just a process, it was a cycle, a never-ending loop of creation and destruction. It was the driving force behind the universe itself. And they were standing at its very core. "Do you see it?" Emma whispered, her voice filled with awe. Elon didn't answer. He couldn't. He was lost in the visions, caught in the swirling chaos of the reckoning. It was more than he could comprehend, more than his mind could handle. But one thing was certain, whatever came next, they would have to face it together. Elon's eyes snapped open. The visions that had flooded his mind began to fade, and he was back in the chamber, standing before the pulsating crystal. The energy still hummed around him, but it was quieter now, less overwhelming. He looked around, his breathing quick, his heart still racing from the overwhelming surge of cosmic knowledge that had crashed into his consciousness. "Are you okay?" Emma's voice broke through the lingering haze. She was standing beside him, her expression worried. Elon blinked, trying to refocus, but his mind was still reeling from the visions. I saw it. I saw everything. The reckoning is a cycle. A loop. It's the driving force of the universe. Creation. Destruction. It's all part of the same process. But we're not just observers in it. We're part of it now. His words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their implications. The reckoning wasn't something that would just pass over them. It wasn't some external event that they could escape. It was inside them, embedded in the very fabric of reality, and now, they had crossed the threshold. Marcus, who had been standing at a distance, listening intently, stepped forward. So, we're supposed to control this? Shape it somehow? Elon shook his head, his mind still trying to piece everything together. I don't think we control it. I think we're meant to understand it. To become part of it. But what does that mean for us? Emma asked. What happens if we don't get it right? If we don't figure this out? Elon didn't have an answer. The crystal in front of him continued to pulse, sending waves of energy through the air. It was as though the entire structure, the very space around them, was waiting for them to make a decision. To choose. He glanced at the crystal again, feeling a strange pull toward it. The visions had given him a glimpse into something beyond his understanding, an interconnected web of existence, a vast network of energy that spanned the universe. And now, it seemed as though the reckoning was testing him, testing all of them. What would they choose? What path would they take in this new, transformed reality? Maybe we don't have to do anything, Marcus said slowly, as though thinking aloud. Maybe the reckoning is just something we're supposed to survive. Let it unfold naturally, like it always has. Elon turned to face Marcus, his gaze intense. Survive? You think we just sit back and let this happen to us? No. This isn't something we can simply survive. It's already happening. We've triggered it. We're already in the heart of it. The question is, what do we do now? Do we accept what it is, or do we try to reshape it? Do we choose to be active participants in this transformation, or passive observers? Emma's voice was quiet, but firm. We're not just passive observers, Elon. We're here because we made the choice to be. The reckoning is our responsibility now. We can't back away from it. There was a quiet agreement in her voice, a steady resolve that cut through the uncertainty hanging over them. But Elon couldn't shake the nagging doubt that lingered in the back of his mind. Was it really their responsibility to control the reckoning? Was it even possible to control something so vast, so beyond their comprehension? As if answering his question, the crystal pulsed again, sending a wave of energy that rippled through the air. This time, the pulse was different. It was sharper, more direct. The ground beneath them trembled, and the walls of the chamber seemed to shift and breathe, as if they were alive, responding to the energy. The air grew thick with the weight of decision. The reckoning wasn't just some cosmic event. It was a force, and it was demanding an answer. What would they choose? Elon closed his eyes for a moment, his mind racing through the possibilities. He thought of everything that had brought them here, Mars, SpaceX, the dreams of reaching the stars, of pushing humanity beyond its earthly limits. They had reached the pinnacle of human achievement, and now, they were standing on the brink of something far greater. But they didn't know what it was. They didn't know how it would end. Yet, deep down, Elon felt a spark of something, hope. A quiet, but insistent voice that whispered, maybe this is what we were meant for. Maybe this is the next step in human evolution. Not just reaching for the stars, but understanding the very forces that govern the universe itself. This is bigger than any of us, Elon said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was low, but filled with conviction. We can't control the reckoning. But we can choose how we respond to it. We can choose to be part of this transformation. To face it, not as victims, but as creators. As active participants in whatever comes next. There was a long pause as the weight of his words settled over them. The energy in the chamber seemed to pulse in rhythm with their hearts, a silent countdown ticking in the background. Marcus was the first to speak, his voice steady. I'm in. Whatever it takes. Emma nodded, her eyes bright with determination. Me too. We're not just going to survive this. We're going to shape it. Elon's gaze flicked to the crystal one last time, feeling the weight of their decision. The reckoning was happening, and they couldn't stop it. But they could choose how they would face it. They could choose to fight, to create, to understand. And so, as the energy in the chamber surged once more, Elon knew there was no going back. They were at the heart of the reckoning now, and what they did next would decide the fate of everything. "We move forward," Elon said quietly. "We choose to move forward." And with that, the pulse of energy around them reached a crescendo, and the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. As the pulse from the crystal faded, a doorway appeared in the far wall of the chamber, no sound, no tremor. Just light peeling away the stone like silk, revealing an arched entrance bathed in a soft, bluish glow. The team stood still, staring at it, unsure whether it was invitation, or test. Elon took the first step forward. The silence was deafening, but the air carried something new now, like the moment before a rocket ignites. Not fear, not quite. Anticipation. The kind that digs into your chest and makes you question if you're ready for the answer. "We've come this far," he said without turning around. "We finish it." Emma and Marcus followed closely behind him, their shadows long on the smooth floor as they passed through the arch. Beyond it, the environment changed again, drastically. It was no longer the red rock caverns of Mars, nor the shimmering warps of the Nexus. They were somewhere else entirely. A vast, open void stretched before them. A platform hovered over nothingness, and in the middle of it stood a single, vertical pane of mirrored light, translucent and humming softly. It wasn't made of glass or metal. It was more like a ripple in time itself. A mirror, but not just of reflection, of choice. "This feels personal," Marcus whispered. "Too personal." As they approached the mirror, each of them began to see something different in its surface. Not their reflections, but possibilities. Versions of themselves in different timelines. Elon saw himself back on Earth, standing before a crowd at a launch event. He was older, maybe 20 years from now, but his eyes were full of doubt, not vision. In that world, he never made it to Mars. He played it safe. Emma saw herself teaching at a university, never stepping foot off Earth. She was fulfilled but missing something deep. Marcus saw a life where he stayed in the military, hardened and closed off, never meeting the people who'd changed him most. "It's not just showing us who we are," Emma said quietly. "It's showing us who we could have been. Or who we might still become." Elon nodded slowly. "This is the reckoning's next move. It's not physical now, it's philosophical. Existential. It wants to know if we understand the cost of creation." The mirror began to flicker, and suddenly, a voice, not like the others, not cosmic or echoing, plain, human, spoke from within. "One choice creates 1,000 outcomes. You stand in the fold between what was, what is, and what could be. Will you own the consequences of your becoming?" Emma's eyes widened. "Is that, us?" The mirror shifted again, and now it showed them a vision of Mars, terraformed, blooming with plant life, cities glowing under protective domes, people walking, laughing. Children playing in low gravity. A future not of conquest, but cooperation. Peace. Progress. Then, without warning, the image shattered like glass and reformed. Now they saw chaos, Earth in flames, Mars scarred with war. Artificial intelligences run wild, people fleeing in ships, the stars no longer a beacon of hope but a backdrop to extinction. And then, darkness. Marcus stepped back. "Why show us this?" "Because we are the variable," Elon said. "The reckoning isn't judging us. It's waiting. It's letting us see what kind of future we're capable of choosing." Emma walked closer to the mirror. "So how do we choose?" At her words, a panel emerged from the floor beside the mirror. It held 3 symbols, a circle, a spiral, and a branching tree. None of them were labeled. Each pulsed with faint light, almost like a heartbeat. It's a test, Elon said. But not of intelligence. Of intention. He stared at the three symbols. Each one likely triggered a future. A reality. Maybe even a complete collapse. But the reckoning wasn't offering safety, it was offering agency. And that's what made it terrifying. The circle, Emma whispered. That's the loop. The cycle. Maybe that continues the reckoning as it's always been. The spiral, Marcus added, that could mean evolution, transformation. Moving forward, but never returning. The tree, Elon said, eyes locked on the final symbol. That's divergence. Infinite branches. Chaos, but also infinite possibilities. No guide. No instruction. Just trust. Elon stepped up to the panel. We didn't come here to keep repeating what the universe has already done. We came to move beyond it. He hovered his hand over the spiral. The moment his palm aligned with the symbol, a surge of light burst from the mirror and engulfed the room. The platform beneath them shuddered, not from instability, but from activation. Around them, the void filled with stars. No, not stars, data. Streams of light like constellations of thought, emotion, memory, and potential. The reckoning was revealing its blueprint. And they had just rewritten a part of it. We chose change, Elon said, turning toward his friends. Not return. Not stagnation. Forward. Always. The light folded inward, collapsing into the mirror. Then the mirror itself shattered, not in destruction, but release. The fragments dissolved into particles, rising like embers and disappearing into the ceilingless void. A doorway reformed ahead, this time glowing with the warmth of a sunrise. Marcus looked to Elon. You sure about this path? No, Elon said with a half-smile. But I've never been more sure we have to take it. The three of them walked forward, together. As they passed through the doorway, the platform vanished behind them, and the path ahead reformed in brilliant streaks of gold and white. The reckoning hadn't ended. But something had changed. Not the universe. Them. As Elon, Emma, and Marcus crossed the radiant threshold, the sensation was unlike anything they'd experienced before. It wasn't like stepping into another room, it was like stepping between realities. One foot in memory, one in possibility. The space they entered wasn't solid. It wasn't void. It was memory and imagination stitched together by energy and consciousness. At first, it looked like Earth. But not any Earth they remembered. The sky was a deep violet, not blue. The air shimmered with gold filaments, drifting like pollen on a spring breeze. Towering trees with translucent bark stretched hundreds of feet above them. Birds with glowing wings circled overhead, leaving trails of stardust. The land was alive, but not just biologically. It was alive in thought. Every blade of grass hummed with intelligence. What is this place? Marcus whispered, stepping lightly over the moss-like ground. It feels like a projection, Emma murmured. Not virtual, more like the reckoning's idea of Earth. If evolution had gone another way. It's not a simulation, Elon said, crouching to touch the glowing moss. It's real. But real in a way that's been redefined. And then, without warning, they heard it, a low, rhythmic chant. Not words, not language. A pattern. A signal. Like a heartbeat passed down through generations. They followed the sound through a corridor of crystalline trees until they reached a clearing. There, standing in a perfect circle, were versions of themselves. Dozens of Elons, Emmas, and Marcuses, each slightly different. One Elon had a long white beard and mechanical arms. Another looked younger, hardened by war. One Emma had glowing eyes. One Marcus wore a robe made of stardust, his skin a shifting hue of galaxies. None of them spoke. Instead, they turned to face the original trio in unison. The real Emma took a step forward, stunned. Are these, us? I think they're echoes, Elon said slowly. Versions of us that were, or could have been. The reckoning didn't just test us. It mirrored every path we might have taken. And now, they're all converging. A voice echoed, not from one figure, but from all at once. You chose the spiral. A path of transformation. But transformation requires fracture. Pain. Surrender. The echo Elon stepped forward. Their eyes shone with knowledge and burden. Will you let go of who you were, to become what the universe needs you to be? The question hit harder than expected. Emma stepped back. Let go. Let go of what? Marcus frowned. You're not saying we give up ourselves, are you? The central echo Elon stepped out of the circle. This version had deep scars across his face, but his eyes were kind. He stared at the real Elon, his counterpart, with something like respect and sorrow. You must understand, the echo said, in a voice that was identical to Elon's, but older. Wiser. The reckoning doesn't just transform the world around you. It transforms you. It tears down what was safe. Familiar. Even what you loved. The spiral leads forward, but not without cost. Emma clenched her fists. We already sacrificed everything to be here. We've watched the world twist. We've faced the void. What more does it want? Your fear, the echo Elon said. Your grip on what's already known. Suddenly, each member of the trio was pulled backward by invisible force, lifted off their feet, suspended in midair like puppets in the wind. Visions tore through them. Elon saw his sons. He saw them growing up without him, living in the shadow of his ambitions. He saw the launch pads, the long nights, the decisions that always seemed right, until they weren't. You could have stayed, been present. The voice was not accusing, but sorrowful. You chose the stars. Was it worth it? Emma saw her mother. Bedridden back on Earth. A promise left unkept. One more mission, then I'll come home, she had said. But the mission became the reckoning. And now, home had no meaning. Marcus saw his sister. She had died in a flood caused by Earth's failing climate. He had joined the Mars mission to escape the pain. You ran, the vision whispered. Now there's nowhere left to hide. The illusions dissolved. The trio dropped to the ground, gasping, shaken, changed. Elon pulled himself to his feet first. That's the fracture, he said hoarsely. It's not the end of reality. It's the end of who we used to be. That's what the reckoning demands. To move forward, we have to let go. Emma nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. We can't carry it all anymore. Marcus stood beside them. Then we bury the past. Right here. The echo versions of themselves began to fade, their bodies unraveling into particles of light. The chant resumed, softer now, like a farewell. As the last echo vanished, the ground beneath them shifted again. The sky darkened. A storm was forming, this time not of wind or lightning, but of consequence. The spiral had been chosen. The fracture had come. Now, the reckoning would demand its final price. The sky above them roared, not like thunder, but like 1,000 worlds unraveling at once. The violet horizon twisted, streaked with burning reds and void-black tendrils. It wasn't a storm in the usual sense. It was time, memory, consequence, and creation, colliding all at once. The reckoning had arrived in full. Elon, Emma, and Marcus stood side by side, the fractured landscape beneath their feet shifting with every breath. Mountains rose, dissolved into rivers of light, and reformed as floating shards of ancient architecture. The ground was no longer Mars. Or Earth. Or any world they knew. It was all of them. And none of them. A voice, no longer fragmented, no longer cosmic, but now deeply personal, filled the space. You have chosen transformation. You have accepted the spiral. Now comes the storm that tests whether you truly understand what that means. Emma steadied herself as the air thickened. I thought we already faced the test. That wasn't the test, Elon murmured. That was the invitation. Suddenly, the ground beneath them exploded with light, and from it rose a figure, taller than any human, composed of the same shimmering energy as the mirror from before. Its body was shifting, reflecting all three of them, Elon's ambition, Emma's compassion, Marcus's resilience. A living embodiment of their choices. It spoke without a mouth, but they heard it clearly, within themselves. To reshape the future, you must surrender the blueprint of the past. And with that, the storm descended. Bolts of raw energy struck the platform around them. The sky cracked open like shattered glass, revealing glimpses of alternate futures, some filled with light and prosperity, others drenched in chaos. For every utopia, there was a dystopia. For every innovation, a downfall. Each flash of light showed them a version of themselves in those worlds. Emma as a leader of a terraformed Mars. Marcus as a peacekeeper, resolving conflicts among interstellar colonies. Elon as a recluse, consumed by regret. And then, Elon as a creator of a new cosmic intelligence. A being formed not of wires and code, but empathy and stardust. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't a god. It was evolution, built on the shoulders of their choices. The storm raged harder, and the reckoning's voice boomed once more. Will you carry the burden of becoming what the universe demands? Or will you fall beneath the weight of what you once were? Elon stepped forward, the storm slamming against his body like ocean waves. He clenched his fists. We didn't come here to repeat history. We came to rewrite it. You want an answer? Here it is, yes. We accept. We accept the burden. The loss. The unknown. We won't fall. We'll rise. The storm paused, briefly. Then Marcus, eyes glowing from exposure to the rift, stepped forward too. This isn't about saving one planet anymore. It's about awakening every version of us that's still hiding from what's possible. Emma followed, her voice quiet but steady. And it's about doing it together. Not through force. Not through fear. But through connection. The reckoning pulsed. The storm began to slow. And then. It collapsed inward. All the chaos, the fragments, the timelines, the futures and pasts, they didn't disappear. They merged. Into a single pulse of light, which shot downward into the cracked surface beneath them and revealed a staircase, spiraling downward into what looked like the very core of the planet. No words this time. Just the pull. Without hesitation, they descended. Step by step, deeper into the reckoning. The walls pulsed with memories, every life choice, every near miss, every crossroad they had faced. It was humbling. Beautiful. Terrifying. Finally, they reached the bottom. There was no machine. No weapon. No throne. Just a field. A simple, endless field of seeds. Each one glowing softly. Elon knelt beside one and touched it. In that instant, he understood. Each seed was a potential future. Some would grow. Some would die. But they were all waiting, for a choice to plant them. The voice returned one final time. You have seen the cost. You have faced the storm. Now, what will you sow? Marcus knelt beside a seed that shimmered with a faint blue light. Peace, he said. A peace not based on fear. But on understanding. Emma chose another, glowing gold. Hope. Hope that survives even the darkest skies. And Elon? He stood for a moment in silence. Then picked a seed that pulsed with both light and shadow. Balance, he said. Creation and consequence. Risk and reward. Humanity and something more. Together, they planted the seeds in the soft, radiant soil. One by one. As they did, the entire field erupted in light. Not blinding, but warm. Embracing. The reckoning, as they had known it, was ending. And something new had begun. The light from the field of seeds didn't just glow, it grew. Slowly, then all at once, sprouting tendrils of luminous energy that climbed upward, spiraling back through the staircase, illuminating the pathway they had taken. It wasn't just the field that was changing. The entire planet was transforming. Above ground, the Martian sky shifted from its usual rusted red to a deep cerulean, like Earth on its clearest day. The winds calmed, and the storms of old that once swept through Olympus Mons and down into the canyons simply stopped. It was as if Mars itself had taken a breath it had been holding for centuries. And exhaled life. When Elon, Emma, and Marcus emerged from the spiral chamber, they weren't the same. Not physically. But inwardly, everything had shifted. They stood at the rim of the valley where they had first encountered the reckoning's pulse. Now, instead of cracked terrain and ancient dust, there were blooms. Strange, alien flowers, radiating bioluminescent hues. Trees taller than rockets. And in the sky above, a soft aurora that danced not in reaction to solar winds, but human intention. Is it over? Emma asked softly. Elon looked around, breathing in the new air. No, he said. It's just beginning. From behind them, a low hum began to grow louder. They turned. A fleet of ships was descending, SpaceX vessels, international probes, private shuttles. Somehow, they'd been called here, drawn by a signal beyond understanding. Not a beacon, not a distress call. A pulse of possibility. The first to land was a sleek white ship marked with Earth's combined insignia. The door hissed open, and out stepped a young woman in a silver suit, blinking at the transformed land. This isn't the Mars we left, she said, stunned. Elon walked toward her. It's not the Mars we arrived at either. More people emerged. Dozens. Then hundreds. Scientists. Engineers. Dreamers. Every nation represented. And none of them asking why, only how. Marcus looked to the horizon. We're not colonizing anymore, he said. We're coexisting. Emma nodded. With the planet. With time. With each other. As more explorers flooded in, they began to notice something else, their thoughts mattered here. Ideas took shape. Intentions altered gravity slightly. It wasn't magic. It was resonance. The reckoning had rewritten the rules, not just of Mars, but of reality itself. But it hadn't chosen chaos. It had chosen consciousness. And that meant responsibility. One night, as Elon stood alone overlooking the Valley of Light, a quiet voice interrupted his thoughts. You did it, said a familiar tone. He turned. It was a version of himself, not the fractured echoes from before, but a projection. Calm. Centered. What you experienced wasn't meant for you alone, the echo Elon said. It was meant to awaken the capacity in everyone. To move from reaction, to creation. Elon stepped closer. So, what now? Do I keep leading? Or get out of the way? The echo smiled. Both. Then it faded, not in death, but in completion. By year's end, the Martian surface had become a beacon for the entire solar system. Earth's conflicts quieted as people turned their eyes to what Elon had ignited, not a utopia, but a proving ground for possibility. They called the new capital Aurelia. A city not built, but grown from intention. It pulsed with bioluminescence and resonance chambers. It had no weapons. No borders. Just labs. Gardens. Libraries. Spaces for silence and innovation. A bridge between Earth and what humanity was becoming. And Elon? He never returned to Earth. Not because he couldn't. But because he understood now, Mars was never the endgame. It was the threshold. One evening, he recorded a message. It wasn't for investors. Or governments. It was for everyone. He sat in the soft glow of Aurelia, a Martian sunset painting the sky behind him. We came here thinking we were escaping something. But we weren't. We were being called. The reckoning wasn't about destruction. It was about choice. About who we are when everything else is stripped away. And we chose transformation. Not the safe path. Not the easy one. But the one that asked everything from us, and gave everything back in return. This isn't the future I dreamed of. It's better. Because it's ours. So wherever you are, look up. The reckoning didn't end. It just changed who's writing the story. The screen faded to black. And in the distance, from the edge of a glowing Martian field, a new seed bloomed. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?